Today, we're announcing that our government
Just hours
is
ago in
launching the
Ottawa,
new
standing
Canada's
not at a farm or a
Grocery and
factory, but
Essential
inside a
benefits.
grocery store, Prime
This will
Minister Mark
deliver
Carney
hundreds of
made a
dollars
move
more
that
into bank
quietly
accounts
rewrites
of
Canada's
more
food
than
future.
12
He announced a
million
$500
Canadians.
million
Starting
federal
this year,
investment aimed at protecting Canada's food supply from escalating trade threats coming out of Washington. This wasn't a routine policy announcement, it wasn't emergency spending, and it wasn't a defensive reaction. It was a signal that Canada is preparing to feed itself no matter what happens at the U.S. border. For decades, Canada and the United States operated as one deeply integrated food system. Livestock crossed south, produce flowed north, and processing facilities on both sides of the border treated trade as permanent and predictable. That system assumed one thing above all else: open borders and stable trade relations. That assumption no longer holds. Donald Trump's renewed tariff threats targeting steel, aluminum, and non-trade agreement goods have turned food supply chains into political pressure points, and Canada is now responding in a way Washington did not expect. Today, we're breaking down who this move targets, what it really changes, why it matters now, how it works, and where this leaves American exporters exposed. At the center of this strategy is Prime Minister Mark Carney, acting through Ottawa's strategic response and food security programs. On the other side of the equation is Donald Trump, whose tariff threats have once again injected uncertainty into cross-border trade. But the real stakeholders go far beyond two leaders. Canadian farmers, greenhouse operators, food processors, grocery chains, and consumers are directly affected. So are American agricultural exporters, meat processors, and produce growers who rely on Canada as a major export market. This isn't just a political dispute, it's a structural economic confrontation. The headline number is $500 million, but the strategy goes far beyond a single check. The funding is designed to strengthen Canada's domestic food system by removing bottlenecks that force Canadian food to leave the country for processing, only to be imported back at higher cost. The plan supports expansion of domestic meat processing facilities, investment in cold storage and food distribution infrastructure, rapid growth of greenhouse vegetable production, and support for smaller food producers and community supply chains. This isn't a consumer subsidy, it's not price controls, and it's not short-term relief spending. It's infrastructure. Infrastructure that permanently shifts how food moves inside Canada. The timing is not accidental. Trump's tariff rhetoric has returned at a moment when food prices are already under pressure. Statistics Canada shows grocery prices rising faster than overall inflation, putting a visible strain on household budgets. Food inflation is politically dangerous, and food security is strategically sensitive.
providing
By
a
acting
one-time
now,
payment that
Carney
runs
accomplishes
to
two things
50%
at once.
of the
He
GST credit.
responds to immediate public concern over
So what does that
grocery
mean?
prices. He uses external trade threats as justification for long-term structural change. This moment gives political cover for a transformation that would have faced resistance under normal circumstances, and that's the critical shift. Officially, the goal is supply chain resilience. Unofficially, the goal is sovereignty. Food is different from other sectors. Governments can tolerate volatility in manufacturing or energy markets, but when food access becomes uncertain, states intervene aggressively. Trump's tariff threats exposed a vulnerability Canada has lived with for decades: reliance on U.S. processing capacity and imported produce during the winter months. Rather than negotiate temporary exemptions or concessions, Carney chose a different path: reduce dependence entirely. This is where the strategy becomes uncomfortable for Washington. Consider meat processing. Canada produces large volumes of beef and pork, but a significant portion of that livestock is shipped to U.S. slaughterhouses due to limited domestic capacity. The finished products are then sold back to Canadian retailers. Tariffs made this arrangement inefficient and expensive. The new funding targets this exact weakness. By expanding Canadian processing capacity, livestock stays in Canada from farm to shelf. Once those facilities exist, they don't disappear when tariffs ease. The same logic applies to greenhouse production. Canada imports billions of dollars worth of vegetables annually, particularly during winter. California and Mexico dominate those supply chains. The new funding accelerates greenhouse expansion using modern controlled environment agriculture, LED lighting, hydroponics, and climate control. There's also a powerful tax incentive. Greenhouses operational before 2030 can immediately expense construction costs, encouraging rapid investment. This creates urgency, and urgency creates scale. This isn't about surviving Trump's tariffs, it's about what happens after. Once Canada builds enough domestic processing and greenhouse capacity, American agricultural exporters don't just lose sales temporarily, they lose market access permanently. And that's the point. Even if tariffs disappear tomorrow, Canadian producers will have new infrastructure, shorter supply chains, and lower exposure to cross-border risk. The trade relationship doesn't snap back, it resets. The effects will be felt nationwide. Ontario, British Columbia, and Quebec already lead Canada's greenhouse sector. This funding accelerates growth in those provinces while encouraging expansion into new regions.